I should have known something was wrong the moment my husband offered to handle the guest list. Evan has never cared about details. In the 12 years we've been married, he's never once volunteered to plan a birthday dinner, let alone anything involving more than 3 people. He's the kind of man who shows up, shakes hands, grills burgers, and disappears to watch the game. Logistics were always my department. But when our daughter Madison graduated from high school, he stepped in like he'd been waiting for this moment his whole life. "I'll take care of it," he told me, standing in our kitchen with that calm, steady tone that used to make me feel safe. "You've done enough." We live in a quiet subdivision outside Columbus, Ohio. 2-story brick houses, trimmed lawns, neighbors who wave but don't pry too much. Madison is our only child, straight-A student, varsity soccer, headed to Ohio State in the fall. I wanted this party to feel like a celebration of everything she worked for. I didn't question Evan's sudden enthusiasm. I thought maybe he was emotional about his little girl growing up. I thought maybe he wanted to prove something to himself. I had no idea he was trying to control the damage. The day of the party, our backyard looked like something out of a magazine. White rented tables, gold balloons that spelled "Congrats, Madison," a long folding table with catered trays from an Italian place downtown. Evan even ordered a custom cake with her college logo on it. He was almost jittery, pacing, checking his phone constantly. "Everything okay?" I asked him around noon while I arranged flowers in mason jars. "Yeah," he said too quickly, "just making sure everyone's coming." I remember thinking it was sweet, that he cared. Guests started arriving around 4. Madison's friends, their parents, my sister and her husband, some of Evan's coworkers from the construction company he manages. The music was playing, the sun was low and golden. It felt like one of those rare, perfect afternoons. And then she walked through the gate. Her name was Lily. I recognized her immediately, even though I'd never met her in person. I'd seen her name pop up on Evan's phone before, late at night. A few months back, I'd woken up around 2 a.m. and seen him in the hallway whispering. When he noticed me, he'd said it was a project emergency. I believed him because I wanted to. Lily wasn't a project manager. She was 22, a recent college grad who had interned at Evan's company last summer. Blonde hair pulled into a low ponytail, simple navy dress. She looked young in a way that made my chest tighten. Evan froze when he saw her. Not shocked, not confused, panicked. "Hey," she said softly, her eyes flicking from him to me. "Thanks for inviting me." Inviting her? I hadn't. Madison was inside grabbing more ice, so she didn't see the way Evan stepped forward quickly, blocking Lily's path like he could physically contain whatever was about to happen. "You came," he said under his breath. "You told me to, just loud enough for me to hear." My stomach dropped. I walked over with a smile I didn't feel. "Hi, I'm Claire." "I know," Lily said, and for a split second there was something in her expression. Guilt, or maybe defiance. I couldn't tell. Evan cut in. "Lily helped out on one of our big commercial builds last year. I figured she'd want to celebrate Madison heading to college." That didn't make sense. Madison and Lily had never met. Why would a former intern come to a high school graduation party unless... I pushed the thought down. The afternoon went on, but the air shifted. Evan hovered near Lily constantly, refilling her drink, laughing too hard at things she said. Every time I looked over, their heads were close together. I told myself I was being paranoid, insecure, crazy. But I watched. I noticed the way she avoided eye contact with me after a while, the way Evan's jaw tightened anytime someone got too close to their conversation. Around 6, it was time for Madison to open cards. Everyone gathered near the patio. She sat cross-legged on a blanket, beaming, reading sweet messages from grandparents and aunts. Lily stood off to the side, arms folded across her stomach like she was bracing for impact. Then Madison picked up a white envelope I didn't recognize. "There's no name on this one," she said, smiling as she tore it open. Inside was a folded letter. She started reading out loud like she had with the others, but after the first sentence, her voice faltered. Her smile faded. "Madison," she read slowly, "you deserve a father who tells the truth." The backyard went completely silent. I felt something inside me tilt, like the ground shifted a few degrees off balance. Madison looked confused. "What is this?" Evan moved fast, too fast. "Okay, that's enough," he said, stepping forward. But Madison pulled the paper away from him. "No, I want to know what it says." Her hands were shaking. She kept reading. "I didn't plan to tell you this way, but I can't live with the secret anymore. Your dad and I have been seeing each other for almost a year. He told me he was going to leave your mom after you graduated. He said this party would be the start of his new life." The words felt like they were being carved into my skin.
Gasps rippled through the guests. My sister whispered, "Oh my God," under her breath. I couldn't breathe. Madison's eyes lifted slowly from the page and locked onto Lily. Lily didn't look away. Evan lunged for the letter, but Madison stood up. "Is this true?" she demanded. His face went pale. "Maddie, I can explain. Is it true?" Silence. And in that silence, I saw it. The truth. The collapse of 12 years. "Yes," Lily said before he could answer. Her voice cracked. "It's true." The world didn't explode. No dramatic storm rolled in. The sun was still shining. A neighbor's dog barked in the distance. But my life ended right there, between the folding chairs and the half-eaten pasta trays. Madison looked at me, and I've never seen that kind of pain in my child's eyes. Not anger at first, just confusion. Like her brain couldn't process that the man who taught her to ride a bike had been living a double life. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to collapse. Instead, I stood there, perfectly still. Evan finally found his voice. "This isn't how it was supposed to happen," he said, looking at me like I was the problem. "Claire, I was going to tell you." "When?" I asked. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "After tonight." After tonight. After using our daughter's graduation as a countdown clock for abandoning his family. Guests started quietly gathering their purses and plates. No one knew where to look. Madison's best friend was crying. My sister came to my side and gripped my hand so tight it hurt. Madison turned back to Lily. "Why would you do this here?" Lily swallowed. "Because he wouldn't tell you. He kept saying he needed more time. I'm pregnant." The words detonated. Pregnant. A ringing filled my ears. The edges of my vision blurred. Evan snapped. That wasn't part of the plan. Plan? They had a plan. Madison dropped the letter. It fluttered to the grass like something dead. She looked at her father like she didn't recognize him. "I hate you," she said, her voice breaking. "You ruined everything." He reached for her, but she stepped back like he was on fire. I finally moved.
I walked straight past Evan without looking at him and picked up the letter from the grass. I folded it carefully, almost politely. Then I looked at Lily. "How far along?" I asked. 10 weeks, she whispered. 10 weeks. Which meant while I was planning Madison's senior trip, while we were sitting in the bleachers at her last soccer game, while Evan was holding my hand and telling me how proud he was of our family, he was building another one. I felt something shift inside me. Not collapse, not shatter. Harden. The party dissolved after that. Cars pulled out of the driveway one by one. Madison locked herself in her bedroom upstairs. I could hear her sobbing through the ceiling. Evan tried to talk to me in the kitchen while Lily stood awkwardly by the sliding door. "Claire, we need to have an adult conversation," he said, like this was a scheduling conflict. I stared at him across the counter that still had graduation cupcakes on it. "You invited her," I said slowly. "I thought it would be better to just get it over with." "At our daughter's party." He ran a hand through his hair. It was time. I laughed then. A hollow, ugly sound I didn't recognize. Upstairs, Madison's crying turned into something quieter, something heavier. And standing there in my own kitchen, surrounded by decorations that said congratulations, I realized my husband hadn't just betrayed me. He'd chosen the most public, humiliating, irreversible way to detonate our lives. And the worst part? A tiny, sickening voice in the back of my mind kept whispering that this wasn't the beginning. It was the middle of something much darker. After everyone left, the house didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt staged, like a set after the camera shut off. Half-empty wine glasses sweating onto coasters, paper plates stacked unevenly on the counter, gold balloons drooping toward the floor as the helium gave up. Madison was still locked in her room. I hadn't tried to go in yet. I didn't know what I would even say. "Sorry your father detonated your childhood between baked ziti and sheet cake?" Evan stood in the kitchen staring at his phone like he was waiting for instructions from someone. Lily was outside by the fence, arms wrapped around herself, looking small for the first time all day. I finally turned to him. "You need to tell me everything," I said. He exhaled like I was asking him to summarize a boring meeting. "Not like this." "There is no better version of this," I replied. My voice was steady. That surprised me. "You invited your pregnant girlfriend to our daughter's graduation party and let her expose you in front of 50 people. There is no better time." He flinched at the word girlfriend. "It's complicated." "It's not complicated," I said. "You're a 44-year-old man who got a 22-year-old intern pregnant." He slammed his palm on the counter. "Don't reduce it like that." "Reduce it." I almost laughed again.
I didn't go looking for this, he said, pacing. It just happened. We were working late. She was easy to talk to. She made me feel alive, I cut in. He hesitated. That told me everything. Alive, like the last 12 years with me had been some kind of emotional coma. When did it start? I asked. Last summer. Last summer. I did the math automatically. That was when Madison was touring colleges. That was when Evan and I went to Charleston for our anniversary. He'd held my face in that hotel room and told me I was his best friend. Was she the only one? I asked. He blinked. What? Was she the only one? A beat too long. Claire, don't do this. So that was a no. Upstairs, I heard Madison's door open. Her footsteps were slow, heavy, like each step cost her something. She came down the stairs with her mascara smeared and her graduation dress wrinkled. She looked younger than she had that morning. Not a college-bound adult. Just my kid. Is she still here? Madison asked flatly. I nodded toward the backyard. Madison walked past us and slid open the glass door. Evan moved like he was going to stop her, but I stepped in front of him. No, I said quietly. Outside, I watched through the window as Madison approached Lily. Lily looked terrified. They stood face to face near the fence. I couldn't hear everything, but I saw Madison's hand shaking as she talked. I saw Lily's head bow. At one point, Madison gestured toward the house, toward me. Then Lily said something that Madison go completely still. Madison turned slowly and looked back through the glass at her father. The look on her face wasn't just anger anymore. It was disgust. She came back inside without another word and walked straight past Evan. I don't want you at my dorm drop-off, she said to him as she climbed the stairs again. He looked like someone had punched him in the chest. Madison? Don't, she snapped. Just don't. Her bedroom door slammed. A minute later, Lily opened the gate and walked down the side yard toward the driveway. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at Evan. He rushed outside to catch her. I stayed where I was. Through the window, I watched them argue in hushed, frantic movements. She looked upset. He looked cornered. At one point, she wiped her eyes and shoved something into his hands. Then she got into a small silver Honda and drove away. Evan stood in the driveway for a long time after she was gone. When he came back inside, he looked different. Smaller somehow. What did she say to Madison? I asked. He didn't answer right away. What did she say? I repeated. He swallowed. She told her that I've been looking at houses. The words hit harder than I expected. Houses. For us, he said quickly. For me and Lily. I was going to move out after graduation. I didn't want to disrupt Madison's senior year. So while I was picking out dorm bedding with our daughter, he was house hunting for his new family. Were you ever going to tell me? I asked. I was trying to figure out the right way. I stared at him. There is no right way to tell your wife you're replacing her. His jaw tightened. It's not about replacing you. Then what is it about? He didn't have an answer that didn't make him the villain. The house was unbearably quiet now. The music had stopped. The catering trays were congealing. Everything felt sticky and wrong. Are you in love with her? I asked. He closed his eyes for a second. Yes. There it was. Clean. Simple. Fatal. And you love me? I asked. He hesitated again. In a different way. I nodded slowly. That's what I thought. I walked past him and started clearing plates into the trash. The normalcy of the motion felt surreal. You don't have to do that right now, he said. Yes, I do, I replied. Because if I stop moving, I might actually feel this. He watched me for a few minutes. I never meant to hurt you, he said. That was the first time my composure cracked. You didn't mean to hurt me? I turned on him. You had an affair for a year, you got her pregnant, you planned to leave after using our daughter's graduation as a milestone, and you invited her here to get it over with. What part of that didn't involve hurting me? He didn't answer. I need you to leave, I said. His head snapped up. This is my house. It won't be, I replied. Not for long. He looked stunned. You think you can just throw me out? I think you just publicly detonated your marriage, I said calmly.
You can go stay at whatever house you were planning to buy. I haven't closed on anything yet. Then go stay with her. She has roommates. I stared at him. For a year, he'd been building a secret life, and he hadn't even figured out where he'd sleep. That sounds like a you problem, I said. Upstairs, Madison's footsteps moved again. She was pacing. Evan rubbed his face. Claire, we need to be rational. I am being rational, I replied. If you stay here tonight, I will not be. He looked at me like he was trying to calculate something. Damage control, reputation, money. Finally, he nodded. Fine, I'll pack a bag.
While he went upstairs to the guest room, I stood in the kitchen alone. The late evening light slanted through the windows, catching on the graduation banner that still hung crookedly above the fireplace. I thought about every memory in this house, every Christmas morning, every fight that ended in compromise, every quiet Sunday with coffee on the porch. Was any of it real? Or was he always halfway gone? When he came down with a duffel bag, Madison's bedroom door was open. She was sitting on the floor, surrounded by torn-up graduation cards. He paused at the bottom of the stairs. "Maddie," he said softly. She didn't look at him. "I love you," he said. She finally lifted her head. "You don't get to say that like it means something." He flinched. "I'm still your dad," he added weakly. "You're her dad now," Madison replied. The silence that followed was suffocating. He looked at me like he expected me to step in, to smooth it over, to protect him. I didn't. He walked out the front door without another word. I watched from the window as he loaded his bag into his truck. The same truck we used to haul Madison's soccer gear. The same truck we drove to family vacations. When he pulled out of the driveway, I felt something I didn't expect. Not devastation, not even heartbreak. Relief, because the pretending was over. But as I turned back into the house, I saw Madison curled up on the couch, hugging her knees, staring at nothing. And I realized this wasn't just my marriage that had been shattered. It was her sense of safety, her idea of love, her belief in family. And that's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me not to. I answered. "Claire?" A woman's voice said. "Yes, this is Lily's mom." My blood ran cold. "She told us what happened," the woman continued, her voice shaking with something that wasn't quite sympathy. "There's something you need to know about your husband." I tightened my grip on the phone. "What now?" I whispered. There was a long pause on the other end. "He's done this before." I stepped out onto the front porch before I said anything else. The air was thick and humid, that heavy Ohio summer air that clings to your skin. Across the street, the Wilsons were dragging their trash cans to the curb like nothing in the world had shifted, like my life hadn't just cracked open in front of half the neighborhood. "He's done this before," Lily's mom repeated. My throat felt dry. "Before Lily?" "Yes." A car passed at the end of the street, bass thumping faintly from the speakers. I leaned against the porch column to steady myself. "How many?" I asked. There was another pause. I could hear a television murmuring in the background on her end, like this was just another domestic evening. "Lily wasn't the first intern," she said carefully. "She told us about at least one other girl, maybe two. He always said the same thing, that his marriage was basically over, that he was staying for his daughter." My chest tightened so hard I had to force myself to inhale. "He told Lily you two hadn't slept in years," she added. That almost made me laugh. "We had slept together 3 nights ago. He said you were emotionally distant, that you didn't understand him." I closed my eyes. This man had been in my bed, in my house, eating meals I cooked, and somewhere inside him he was building a narrative where I was the villain. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked finally. "Because I don't like what he did to my daughter," she said, her voice sharpening. "And I don't trust him. Lily thinks he's going to leave you and start fresh. I'm not convinced." "So what do you think he's going to do?" I asked. "I think he panicked today," she said. "I think he thought controlling the situation would protect him. Men like that don't give up control easily. Men like that." I thanked her, hung up, and stood there for a long time staring at the American flag someone had stuck in their flower bed across the street after Memorial Day. It felt absurdly normal. When I went back inside, Madison was still on the couch, but her eyes were open now. "Who was that?" she asked. "Lily's mom." She blinked. "Why would she call you?" "She says this isn't the first time." Madison didn't look surprised. "Yeah," she said quietly. I froze. "What do you mean?" She swallowed. "I saw something last year." The room felt like it tilted again. "What did you see?" She rubbed her palms together nervously. "Last fall, I was using Dad's laptop to print something for school. His messages were open. My heart pounded. There were texts. Not Lily. Someone else. A girl named Kayla. She was sending him selfies. He was..." She trailed off, her face twisting with embarrassment. "He was what?" I asked gently. "He was flirting. Like gross flirting." Her eyes filled again. I didn't know what to do. I thought maybe it was just stupid stuff. I thought if I told you it would blow up our family. I sat down beside her and pulled her into me. She was trembling. "You should never have had to carry that," I whispered. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "No," I said fiercely. "None of this is on you." But inside, something darker was forming. He hadn't just betrayed me. He'd let her daughter sit on that knowledge alone. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The house was eerily quiet without Evan's heavy footsteps or the sound of him grinding coffee beans in the kitchen. I walked into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were swollen, but I didn't look destroyed. I looked focused. I picked up my phone and searched his company website. His bio was still there. Family man. Dedicated husband and father. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I opened our bank account. That's when my pulse really started racing. There were withdrawals I didn't recognize. Large ones. 5,000 here, 8,000 there, spread out over months. Transfers to an account I didn't know. My hands started shaking. He wasn't just house hunting. He was moving money. I went to the filing cabinet in the office and pulled out our tax returns, our savings account statements, the mortgage paperwork. The transfers had started almost exactly a year ago, right when Lily said the affair began. Madison came downstairs around 9, her face pale but composed. "Are you okay?" I asked honestly. "But I will be." She nodded slowly. "I need to go to the bank today," I told her. "And I might call a lawyer." Her jaw tightened at that word. "Are you divorcing him?" "Yes." There was no hesitation. She looked relieved. Not devastated. Relieved. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. "Evan." I let it go to voicemail. Then another text. "We need to talk. This got out of control." Out of control. Like he'd slipped on a wet floor.
A minute later, another message. "Lily's freaking out. Her parents are threatening to cut her off. You need to calm things down." I stared at the screen in disbelief. Calm things down? As if I was the unstable one. I finally called him back. He answered on the first ring. "Claire, did you move money?" I cut in. Silence. "That's not what we should be discussing right now. Did you move money?" "Yes," he admitted, his voice tight. "I was preparing." "For what?" "For the separation." "You were siphoning our savings while sleeping in my bed?" "It's my money too. It was our future," I snapped. He exhaled loudly. "You're going to make this ugly, aren't you?" I almost admired the audacity. "You invited your pregnant mistress to our daughter's graduation party," I said slowly. "You don't get to ask for pretty." He was quiet for a long moment. "I never meant for Maddie to get hurt," he said. "But she did. I thought if we just got through the summer—" "There was never going to be a clean version of this," I interrupted. "You just didn't want to look like the bad guy." "That's not fair." I actually laughed. "Fair?" My hand tightened around the phone. "Did you tell Lily you loved her before or after you were planning to leave?" I asked. "Claire, answer me." "Before," he muttered. "And you were still sleeping with me." He didn't respond. I felt something crystallize inside me. "Here's what's going to happen," I said calmly. "I'm freezing the accounts today. I'm calling an attorney. And you are not coming back to this house unless it's to pack your things with a moving truck. You can't just lock me out. Watch me." He lowered his voice. "You think you're strong right now, but when reality hits—" "Reality already hit," I said, "in our backyard." There was a long silence. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "You don't know everything." I stopped pacing. What does that mean? It means Lily isn't the only complication. My heart started hammering. What other complication? Another pause. Calculated. "There are things about our finances you don't understand," he said. "Investments, debts." "What debts?" "We'll talk in person." "No," I said immediately. "You tell me now." "Not over the phone." And then he hung up. I stood there, staring at the blank screen, my reflection faintly visible in it. Upstairs, Madison was blasting music in her room, angry, pulsing pop that rattled the floorboards. I walked into the office and opened every drawer in Evan's desk. Receipts, contracts, a folder labeled personal. Inside were documents I'd never seen. A loan agreement, $25,000, co-signed by him and Lily, dated 3 months ago. My vision tunneled. He hadn't just been planning to leave. He'd already financially entangled himself with her. And somehow I had a sick, sinking feeling that the worst of it still hadn't surfaced. The next morning, the house was quiet again, but the silence felt loaded, like the calm after a storm that's still boiling underneath. Madison had skipped breakfast, retreating into her room with her laptop and earphones. I didn't try to coax her out. I couldn't. She needed space to process the same father I was trying to reconcile in my mind. I, however, couldn't stop moving. I was pacing the kitchen, staring at the stacks of unopened mail, the envelopes from banks and loan offices that now felt like weapons. I decided to go through everything systematically. Every statement, every transaction, every text I could access. Evan had been meticulous, almost surgical. He'd opened accounts in different banks, some under her name, some under companies he'd created. Every time I found something, my stomach clenched tighter. I felt both fury and disbelief. How could he think he could build this double life and maintain it with zero risk of exposure? And yet here we were, shattered in the middle of a suburban street and a backyard full of balloons that still spelled, "Congrats, Madison." By mid-afternoon, I had a clearer picture.
And it was worse than I'd imagined. Evan wasn't just planning to leave. He had already created a safety net for himself and Lily, a fully separate financial world that would allow him to walk away from me and Madison with minimal disruption to his life. He'd bought property under a limited liability company, taken out lines of credit, and arranged for transfers from our accounts without me ever noticing. And the kicker? There was a clause in the lease he'd signed for the new house that allowed him to terminate our joint mortgage obligations if he moved out. He had legally insulated himself from almost everything. I realized with a sick clarity that this wasn't about him wanting more time to tell me. He'd been planning this for months. I didn't even hear Madison come down until she appeared in the doorway, dressed now, carrying her soccer bag. Her face was hard, but her eyes were stormy. I motioned for her to sit at the kitchen table, and she did, wordlessly. I looked at some of the accounts, I said. She didn't flinch. He's been moving money, creating separate lines, buying property. It's extensive. She leaned back in her chair, silent for a long moment. I already knew something like this was happening, she said finally. I saw him last fall. I just didn't want to believe it. I felt my chest tighten. I'm sorry you had to carry that. Don't be, she said bitterly. You didn't do anything wrong. He did. That's on him. The strength in her voice made my chest ache. My little girl, suddenly grown up, holding herself together while the man who raised her treated her like collateral damage. By the time I made calls to freeze our joint accounts and schedule a consultation with a lawyer, it was late afternoon. The air in our neighborhood had shifted. The usual hum of kids on bikes and sprinklers in the yards felt hollow. I drove Madison to a coffee shop down the street. She didn't want to talk much, but she held my hand across the table, and I felt some anchor in the storm. Back home, I opened the sliding glass door and stepped into the backyard. The balloons had started drooping. The white folding chairs were scattered in careless chaos. It was as if the party never happened, and yet everything about it screamed the opposite. I started picking up stray cups and plates, moving them to the trash, methodically, almost ritually. Then my phone buzzed. Evan. Again. I ignored it. Minutes later, another text. Claire, this is spiraling. I want to fix this. Please. I'll explain everything in person. I wanted to throw the phone across the yard. I wanted to scream. I wanted to vanish from the planet entirely. But instead, I simply locked it and set it down. It wasn't about controlling him anymore. It was about controlling myself, controlling my own narrative, and making sure Madison's life didn't get pulled into the wreckage any further. By evening, Lily's presence still lingered in my mind like a shadow. I kept replaying the scene in my backyard, the way she had calmly handed Madison the letter, the way she hadn't flinched when our whole life imploded in front of her. She wasn't some innocent victim. She had participated. She had known exactly what she was doing. And yet, part of me also hated Evan more. He'd made that happen. He'd allowed it. Madison came down later, her hair damp from a shower. She looked me in the eyes for the first real time that day.
I want to go to my dorm tomorrow, she said. I don't want to wait. I can't wait here anymore. I nodded. We'll go first thing. That night, I barely slept. I sat on the edge of our bed, looking at the half-empty drawers, the photo frames I used to rearrange weekly, the shared life that now felt like someone else's story. Evan's side of the closet was untouched. I almost felt absurdly relieved. He hadn't packed. He hadn't tried to leave a note. He hadn't even tried to apologize in a way that felt real. He had vanished emotionally long before he physically walked away. The next morning, Madison and I packed the car in silence. I could feel the weight of her eyes on me, questioning, trusting, and somehow still loving. We drove to the campus, windows down, the city streets washing past us. I thought about the moment she would step onto her own life stage, and I wanted to scream at Evan that he had no right to taint this day. But I didn't. I kept my voice steady. I kept my hand on the steering wheel. When we arrived, she hugged me tightly, the kind of hug that made me feel both protective and powerless at once. "Thanks for still being here," she whispered. "Always," I said. The campus was bustling. Families moved in, students carried boxes and chairs. I watched her navigate the crowd, a tiny figure with determination and grace, and I realized that life would continue. She would continue. And despite everything, I had to continue too. Later that night, I returned home. Evan had left a note. Brief, cold. "I'm sorry. I never wanted it to go this way. I love you." I crumpled it into a ball. His version of love didn't mean anything anymore. I went into our bedroom, packed a few things that were purely mine, and left the rest. It wasn't revenge.
It was reclaiming my space, my life. Over the following weeks, the reality of the betrayal settled like sediment. Madison adjusted slowly, but I saw the fractures every time she spoke about him, every time she flinched at a text message. We attended counseling, not family, not with him, but individually, because grief was grief, no matter the form it took. I watched him from a distance, through social media and mutual friends, building his new life with Lily. Every post, every picture, every carefully staged moment was a reminder of what I'd lost, what had been taken from us, but also a reminder of my own resilience. Months later, I received another call, Lily again. She was panicked. Something about finances, something about threats from her own parents. I listened quietly, without judgment or reaction. By then, I had learned the only thing I could control was my own response. I didn't rescue her, I didn't scold her. I just listened, filed it away, and let the consequences fall where they would. Evan had created a mess that wasn't mine to fix. And finally, one evening, I sat on the porch, the quiet Ohio suburbs stretching around me. Madison had texted from her dorm that she had made new friends, that her first day of college had gone well. I didn't feel victory, I didn't feel triumph. I felt a quiet, raw kind of strength. I had survived the unthinkable, faced betrayal in its most public, most humiliating, and most personal form. And somehow I had come out the other side with my daughter intact, with my life intact, even if it would never be the same. I thought about Evan, about the year of deception, about the graduation party, the letters, the lies. I thought about the ways he had underestimated both Madison and me, and I smiled quietly to myself, because the final truth, the one thing he could never manipulate, never plan for, never control, was that we were still here, still standing, still moving forward, together. And for the first time since that morning in the backyard, the word betrayal didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a doorway, because the next chapter, our chapter, was ours to write.